Today's reading comes from the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. There must be always remaining in every life some place for the singing of angels, some place for that which in itself is breathlessly beautiful and, by an inherent prerogative, throwing all the rest of life into a new and creative relatedness. Something that gathers up in itself all the freshets of experience from drab and commonplace areas of living and glows in one bright light of penetrating beauty and meaning, then passes. The commonplace is shot through with new glory. Old burdens become lighter. Deep and ancient wounds lose much of their old hurting. A crown is placed over our heads that for the rest of our lives, we are trying to grow tall enough to wear. Despite all the crassness of life, despite all the hardness of life, despite all the hard discords of life, life is saved by the singing of angels. Happy summer solstice. Tonight at 11:32, for those of us on the East Coast, the sun will shine at its northernmost point on our planet Earth and will start its yearly retreat southward. Of course, it is our Earth on its tilted axis that moves and creates the seasons. It's only our perception from what seems to us our stationary position on the planet's surface that makes the sun appear to be in motion. For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we mark the beginning of summer. Today is the longest day of the year. For those in the Southern Hemisphere, today marks the beginning of winter, the longest night of the year. On our wondrous planet with its unlikely 23.5-degree tilt, people experience both winter and summer at the same exact moment. Today, we also celebrate Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all among us who are fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, foster fathers, adoptive fathers, father figures, mentors, and all those who have played fatherly roles to those in their communities. We also hold those who celebrate the fathers in their lives today, those who mourn their fathers, those who wanted to be fathers but were unable to, those who had no fathers, those whose relationships with their fathers are complicated or harmful or non-existent. Parenthood is complicated. Having or not having parents in our lives is complicated. The message we get in US society about what fatherhood is, what it should and shouldn't be, doesn't leave much room for complexity. The binary, gender-based roles assigned to men and women, to fathers and mothers, are rigid. And in their rigidity can set both parents and their children up for disappointment. How many of our parents, whether we have exactly two and one identifies as female and the other male, how many of us have had parents who fit into society's expectations of the roles they would play in our lives? I am blessed in that both of my parents are still alive. They will be celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary later this summer. Like many of her generation, my mother stayed home with me and my 4 siblings while my father went to work. Dad was good at fixing things around the house. He was the disciplinarian. He was the one who cooked on the grill, and he did fun things with us. He took us out for donuts or on picnics. He would cry as he watched ballet or opera in the back room, while my mom watched sports in the front room. He is more emotional and in some ways more nurturing than my mother is. I am grateful for being raised by parents who didn't always fit traditional gender roles. From my perspective, fathers could be emotional and mothers could like sports. At the time my parents started having children, gender roles were even more rigid than they are today. But they built a space to be their complex selves in the framework of our family. Western culture tends towards either or thinking. Someone either acts like a girl or acts like a boy. It's either light or dark. Behavior is good or bad. We feel happy or sad. The reality is that life is more complicated than that. A person, regardless of their gender, can have characteristics that could be considered masculine and others that are seen as feminine. A parent who identifies as male can be nurturing. A parent who identifies as female can be stoic. Just as today it is both winter and summer at the same time on this amazing planet, we are not limited to either male or female. We can be fathers and mothers, both and. In agrarian societies, summer solstice was a time of celebration. Crops had been planted, fruit was ripening. The longer hours of sunlight allowed for leisure time after putting in a full day's work in the fields. People dreamed of bountiful harvests. They celebrated easier life that came along with warmer temperatures. Bonfires roared, people sang, danced, told stories. They feasted. Communities came together to revel in the abundance of the season. Before clocks were invented, the apparent movement of the sun across the sky was one of the very few ways people had to mark the time. Rather than day to day, their time was kept season by season. Northernmost sunset to southernmost sunset. Growing season to dormant season. Dormancy was as important to abundance as the growing season. All life is cyclical, light and dark, destruction and construction, both and. There's so much about summer that seems abundant. Farmers markets piled high with fresh produce, berries growing on feral lines, weeds filling up flower beds, which seems to happen overnight. Before the COVID pandemic, summer was a time of pop-up carnivals, of outdoor concerts, family vacations, time enough to take a long walk after work and still return home in the daylight. And as the COVID infection rate continues to drop and the vaccination rate increases here in New York, music and festivals and vacations instead of staycations will likely be returning. After a long pandemic, to have survived seems a good enough reason to celebrate. I was at a small outdoor party to celebrate my young neighbor's graduation from kindergarten this week. And his mother said to me, "We should all be celebrating our graduations from COVID." I heartily agreed. Getting a haircut, hugging a friend, seeing people smile all seem abundant reasons for celebration. Each of these moments and so many others like them are experienced as so much sweeter, precisely because they were denied for so long. After not hugging for 15 months, my heart bursts with the ability to give and receive a hug. Yesterday was Juneteenth, this country's newest federal holiday. Juneteenth, a shortening of June 19th, commemorates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans in the United States. We remember the events of June 19th, 1865, when Union forces entered Galveston, Texas, and enforced the Emancipation Proclamation issued by President Lincoln almost 3 years earlier. This event marked the official end of slavery in the South. American culture tends to think of a celebration as a party or recreational activity. In its original meaning, however, celebration indicates a ritual or ceremony, or a setting aside of routine activities to close businesses, for instance, for the purpose of drawing attention to something of public importance. In light of increased police violence, hate crimes, and prejudice, Juneteenth this year did not seem to be a day for rejoicing. This country is far from living up to its ideals of liberty and justice for all, despite the efforts of so many to hold our nation accountable and to effect change. This year, the congregation made the difficult decision to not hold an event yesterday to commemorate Juneteenth. But it is still important to remember the difficult and oppressive history of this nation. Rose Creighton, the facilitator of our anti-racism action group, has selected a short video entitled "Why All Americans Should Honor Juneteenth," and we will play that video at the start of Fellowship Hour. I hope you will stay after the service to watch it with us. We are also in the middle of Pride Month, when we commemorate the events of the Stonewall Uprising of June 1969, when patrons of the Stonewall Inn gay bar resisted arrest following a police raid. Pride Month is marked with parades and other events where those who identify as LGBTQ+ celebrate the freedom to be themselves in a culture that so often denies them that freedom. So many of the celebrations of our lives, whether of the rejoicing kind or the commemorative kind, they mark what is important in our lives. Celebrating the summer solstice or a wedding or a birthday commemorates a transition point. What happened before is honored, is put behind us, and makes way for something new. Celebrations like Father's Day and anniversaries honor the special roles that people have in our lives. Public celebrations like Juneteenth, Labor Day, and Martin Luther King Day invite us to remember historical events that continue to affect us today, and invite us to take actions to build a more just world. In these moments of celebration, we set aside our normal lives to draw attention to what is important, to reflect on the past and the roles we and others played in bringing those events about. We envision a new future and create opportunities for change. In taking a moment out of our ordinary lives, we celebrate and commemorate the past and dream of a new future. We bring our whole selves to any celebration with all of our complexities, both our positive and negative experiences. Even joyful celebrations can trigger difficult feelings, memories of loss, memories of times when harm was done to us, or of harm we did to others. We each hold good and bad, losses and new beginnings, joy and pain. One does not negate the existence of the other, both and. When we come together as a community to celebrate, we welcome our complexity into that space. We share in the joy and the loss. We hold each other up. We share with each other what is always abundant: love, spirit, the power of connection. I believe that any celebration creates a place for what Howard Thurman called in the reading earlier, the singing of angels. We set aside the ordinary, we gather together, we remember what is important. We share the abundant spirit of life with each other. And in doing so, we are infused with strength, with meaning and inspiration. Every Sunday, we at Community Church come together to celebrate, to revel in the abundance of what can only be created in communion with each other. So whatever you celebrate or commemorate today, Father's Day, summer solstice, Juneteenth, Pride Month, the ability to hug a loved one or eat a fresh strawberry. May you revel in what is always abundant, love, and the spirit of life. May it be so.